we were connected to talk about your memoir, but I understand that you have a short film that's in the works right now that's decades in the making. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, it was actually made decades ago. Okay, I finished it in 1983. Actually, it was 1986 when we really finished it because I had a lot of post-production to do. But it's a short film titled Firefight, and we're going to premiere it on Viking Samurai's YouTube channel in I think, March 2nd. It's an interesting relic from the early 1980s. It's got, first of all, one of the stars is Frank Dukes, the real Frank Dukes. He's really in the movie. We got Philip Rhee and Simon Rhee. Brian Thompson's very first appearance in a movie anywhere. And it's just a neat little war movie that we shot at Camp Pendleton over the course of 2 weekends. Something that I wrote for my play, my theatrical piece called Tracers. And the director decided not to use it for very good reasons. It's this big sprawling scene with helicopters and gun battles and all this, and we just couldn't do it on a small stage. So so he just said, okay, forget it. We're not going to do this. And I liked the scene so much that I wanted to do something with it. And so I decided I'm going to shoot this thing in 16 millimeter. I put a little production together, and I got Frank Dukes involved. Frank wanted to be, he pretty much saw himself as movie star material at the time. A lot of people do, though. Okay.
Right.
I'm one of the few that's never seen myself as an actor or a movie star, but Frank thought he had what it would take. Anyway, so I said, okay, Frank, I'm going to make this little movie. You want to be in it? And he was very enthusiastic. He actually even put a little bit of money into the production. I raised money from a number of people, almost like crowdfunding, but before there was the internet. So I had to do it, person to person. All right. I just had
Mel Brooks producers style.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like Max Bialystock, but I wasn't
exactly.
Yeah, I wasn't courting old ladies to get their money. I went to relatives and friends.
Yeah.
So and Brian Thompson put a little bit of money into it. Anyway, so we put a budget together, and then we shot this little movie on 16 millimeter film using film cameras, and it took a while. The shooting took a couple of weekends. It took a while to do the editing, basically because I ran out of money. I had enough money to shoot it. We had to rent camera equipment. Nowadays, you make a little movie like this on your iPhone, okay? But
yeah.
Back then, I had to rent equipment and haul equipment down. We got, because I was a former Marine, I was able to talk the Marines into letting me shoot at Camp Pendleton, and to let me use a CH-46 helicopter, which is this really big ass helicopter. Okay, it can hold like 20 people. So we had that for a couple hours, and so we got this little movie, and I haven't screened it anywhere in about 40 years. So we blew it up to 35 millimeter, and I screened it a few times. And actually, we screened that movie for Sunil Shah at Imperial Entertainment because Jean-Claude wanted me to direct Lionheart, but Sunil was reticent, to say the least. And so Jean-Claude showed him this little movie, and Sunil decided, okay, we'll give this guy a shot. And I also had a deal with Dino De Laurentiis. In that case, it was Sam Raimi who showed the movie to Dino. Sam was an early fan of this movie. He really liked the movie. So he showed it to Dino, and I got a deal at Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group for a film called Atlas. It was going to be a science fiction, like Spartacus in space, we called it. It was in the star Jean-Claude Van Damme as the Spartacus-like character. Movie never happened because DEG went under. They went bankrupt. And then Menachem Golan saw it, and he wanted me to direct a movie for Canon. And that's a long, long story. If you read my book, the whole story is laid out in there, how Leon Isaac Kennedy and I went into Menachem's office, and we had this script called Strikers Force.
Mhm.
And Menachem, I got a great idea. Since you've got to deal with Leon, they made a couple of penitentiary films with Leon. And now you've got this new guy, Jean-Claude Van Damme. His movie hasn't been released yet, but you got a 3-picture deal with him. So let's use Jean-Claude and Leon in this movie. And Menachem said, no way, no way am I using Van Damme. Van Damme, he labeled him poison. Van Damme is poison. He'll never be a movie star. And he wanted me to do it with Michael Dudikoff instead. Dudikoff read the script, decided he didn't like it, so that didn't happen. But this little movie, Firefight, is what got me in the door with Menachem, Dino, and Sunil Shah. And I don't know if I would have had the opportunity to direct Lionheart had I not made this little movie. So anyways, it's going to be out there. The reason I haven't shown it for so many years, I shot it on 35, but I had only made VHS copies, because back then that's basically what you put movies on VHS, okay?
Yeah.
Half-inch VHS, and it did not look good. It did not look good or sound good on half-inch VHS. So I was kind of embarrassed to show it. And then within the last year, I had an opportunity to to digitize it in 2K at a lab called, oh crap, what's the name of that lab? Anyways, so we have a nice 2K copy. It looks beautiful. And we're going to put it out there. And I'm not expecting to win any awards with it. Never really did. But it's just an interesting relic, because here it is. We're in 1983. This is pre-Bloodsport.
Oh, yeah.
Pre-Cobra, pre-Terminator,
pre-Electric Boogaloo for Jean-Claude.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I didn't even know Jean-Claude at the time, because this is before Bloodsport was even written. Okay, I was basically buddies with Frank Dukes at the time, and he was telling me these tales and showed me this article in Black Belt magazine, and that's so those were the first stirrings of Bloodsport. And then when I was editing Firefight, we edited at a probably the most low budget post-production house in Hollywood, a place called Movie Tech. And while I was there, so I'm in one room editing this little movie, and in the next room is a guy named Ruben Mazzini, who's cutting pornos for a guy named Mark DeSalle. And so I had a number of conversations with Ruben, told him I was a screenwriter. And I think right around that time, I'd been hired by Stallone to co-write Rambo 3. So, this sounds like this is somebody I should introduce to Mark DeSalle. And Mark was looking to make, he wanted to make martial arts movies. So I had lunch with him. Hang on, I'm going to have a sip of water here, okay?
Sure. You do that, I'll do the seltzer.
All right. So Mark had an idea. He took me to lunch. He said, movie genres come in cycles. There might be science fiction for a while, then there's war movies and romantic comedies. Anyways, there hasn't been a martial arts movie for a while, not since Enter the Dragon got this whole cycle of martial arts movies going.
Yeah.
And it's time to revive that cycle. And I've got an idea for a movie called Kickboxer. Okay, so he pitched Kickboxer to me. And I didn't really love the pitch, because this is well before I got involved with Kickboxer later on. And the storyline was that the character Kurt defeats Tong Po in a kickboxing match in America. And Tong Po's pissed off about this. So that evening he goes to Kurt's house to get revenge. And he throws a kick at Kurt, but Kurt's mother comes walking in the kitchen at the same time with a tray of cookies or something. And he ends up hitting Kurt's mother in the face with a kick, and he kills her. Okay, so now Kurt wants to take revenge. and goes to Thailand to hunt down Tong Po. I want Tong Po.
Yeah.
But then a few years later, I got involved. This is after Bloodsport. I got involved with Kickboxer. Mark wanted me to come back and write it. I told him and Jean-Claude, look, we got to get rid of the mother. Okay, that's kind of it's just way too corny, over the top corny. What if Kurt's got a brother?
Over the top, not Stallone over the top.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Not even PM Entertainment. Okay, basically, it was just a bad idea.
Yes.
So I said, well, what if Kurt's got a brother, and the brother fights Tong Po in Thailand, and the brother gets some horrendous injury. Basically, he ends up with a lifelong injury. He's crippled because of Tong Po, so that gives Kurt the impetus to go after Tong Po. Anyways, so I didn't like Mark's story, mostly because of the mother angle. I said, well, Mark, look, I got an idea. I think it's a better idea for a martial arts movie. It's called Bloodsport. Bloodsport. Well, he immediately lit up when I mentioned that title. That's a great title for a martial arts movie. And then I told him about Frank Dukes. It's based on a real guy, Frank Dukes, and he says he won this secret kumite fight. And we've even got an article in Black Belt magazine. So the editor of Black Belt thinks that this is a true story. So I introduced Frank to Mark DeSalle. So see, all of this came from Firefight. I wouldn't have met Mark had I not been editing in the room next to his. So one thing led to another, and then we've got Bloodsport, which is really, it did really relaunch this whole cycle of martial arts movies, because we had Blood Fist, Blood Match, Blood Kick, all kinds of titles like that. And suddenly there were martial arts tournament movies being made.
So back to the book. How long did it actually take you to write the book?
How long did it take?
Yeah.
I worked on it with Corey Dana, and I'd say it was at least a couple of months, 2-3 months, something like that.
And how long does that compare to the average screenplay of yours?
It just depends on the screenplay. Sometimes I'll bang out a screenplay in a month, sometimes a year. Okay, so it was about average, like writing a screenplay.
Was the hardest part of it getting it organized into sequence? Was it going back and remembering things?
Well, fortunately, I keep a lot of paperwork. I've got filing cabinets, so full of paperwork. I have paperwork on every one of my projects. So I was pulling all this stuff out, contracts and call sheets and all this stuff. So I had stuff to reference so I could get the dates correct and the names correct. And then we've also got IMDb, and that was helping quite a bit too, as far as filling out all the actors' names. So I did a lot of fact checking, and it's all pretty accurate. And then there's my own memories too. Once I started, I started from the beginning and kind of worked my way through the years, and I just started remembering movies that I really loved, movies that influenced me, and then I was able to put 2 and 2 together in some cases, and I realized that that movie Billy Jack really had a lot of influence, not just on me, but on David Morrell, because Billy Jack came out before First Blood, before the book First Blood. And I think David Morrell must have been influenced by Billy Jack, because there's a lot of similarities between Billy Jack and John Rambo. Vietnam vets. And I don't know if they ever showed Rambo knowing Hapkido or anything like that, but basically, Rambo's a badass too. And he comes up against a sheriff who wants to keep his quiet little town kind of, quiet. And Billy Jack runs up against the sheriff who's trying to shut down this school for Indians. So basically, it's the hero versus law enforcement in both of them.
Right.
So there's a lot of similarities, and I came to that realization as I was working on that section.
Well, Rambo 3, I think it's a great movie. Obviously, after 9/11, it got pulled from Blockbuster and some of those other things because of the
Did it
television.
really? Oh, I
Oh,
didn't know that.
yeah,
Seriously?
they felt it was temporarily insensitive because he's aiding the Taliban. So Blockbuster pulled it. You never heard that?
I never heard that. No, I never heard. That's interesting. So
Oh,
yeah, because he was, yeah, but it wasn't the Taliban. You know, I did my research on that, and it was this guy named Massoud. Massoud was the head of the Northern Alliance, and that was basically the Northern. The Taliban killed this guy Massoud. Massoud is actually in the movie. That's the guy that Rambo hooks up with, and the Taliban killed him like 2 or 3 days before 9/11. Did you hear about this?
no.
They
I didn't realize
they
it went full circle like
they
that.
they sent a fake camera crew. This sounds like something out of a movie. Okay, they
Yeah.
sent a fake camera crew, and they had a big camera. And okay, Mr. Massoud, you just sit right there, and we're going to interview you. And there was a gun inside the camera, and they killed him. And this was just a few days before 9/11 because they wanted to get the Northern Alliance out of the way so they could take over all of Afghanistan. But I guess
Wow.
Blockbuster didn't hear that part. So, uh,
Well, I have two questions for you that are going to come across sounding stupid, but they're meant to honor everything that you do. Because if you can take a compliment here, without
okay.
Bloodsport, I don't think UFC would have happened. I don't think the craze of MMA would have happened. It definitely helped put that whole sport and genre onto the map. And I also think that you've worked with some of the greatest movie stars of all time, and you still have great projects coming out. But you mentioned before about Kickboxer. You didn't
Uh,
like the tie-in to the pitch about the mother. But
right.
any idea if the dancing sequence was written originally into that, or if that was a later on added thing that Jean-Claude went, "Hey, I can dance"?
It was just a spur of the moment thing, as far as I know. Yeah. You know, spur of the moment things happen on movies all the time. Uh, Jean-Claude's very first bare butt scene was in Lionheart. Okay. Now, it wasn't scripted.
Oh,
Basically, yeah, we're in Cynthia's apartment. He's just taking a shower. He's got a robe on. And he says to me, hey, what if I drop the robe? And I said, well, look, let's shoot it both ways. We'll shoot with the robe on, and then let's do one where you drop the robe. Okay. So we did it both ways. And that became like a little trademark of his. He would always show his ass afterwards, just just about every movie. But that was just not in a script, just spur of the moment, and we just went for it. And I think the dance scene in Kickboxer was probably the same. I wasn't there. I can't tell you for sure, but most likely it was. And that's become kind of a famous little scene. You know, people use it as memes on the internet.
exactly, exactly. I've had many a conversation about that dancing, and Conan O'Brien brought him on just to do the dance.
All
No,
right.
the last question I have, because you come from a position of having been around all the greats, worked with the greats, and remembering the stuff, and your agenda is not going, I'm the most important person in the room, unlike some of the people that you've worked with. But one thing I can't figure out is, was the beef between Jean-Claude and Steven Seagal real, or is that just a made up thing by the media?
It was real. It was
Oh,
real. Yeah. Because basically they were the two martial arts stars at the time. So they were rivals. And Jean-Claude is not one to start hurling insults, but I do believe Steven Seagal might have been the first to actually disparage Jean-Claude and his abilities. And Jean-Claude is a fighter. He's not one to take stuff like that lightly. So, okay, Steven, you want to throw some shade at me? I'm throwing some shade back at you. And yeah, and then we had Arsenio Hall
yes.
interviewed both of these actors, and Arsenio was goading them to insult one another because basically that's going to get it's going to get a lot more interest in his show. So
Yeah.
he was stirring the pot. And actually, if not for Arsenio, this might not have gone as far as it did. But Arsenio was definitely trying to get some sparks flying, and he did get some sparks flying.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying all that. So the book, the last question I have about the book before I let you go is, a lot of people, when they write a memoir, they go, how am I going to put 40 to 50 years into 300 pages? Oh, I got to leave stuff out. There's a couple hundred pages left out. In your case, is there enough cutting room floor stuff that there could be another book in the future?
Very possibly, because see, this was not a memoir. Okay, this is not an autobiography. I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to be me talking about me, which is why I got Corey Dana involved. And Corey, the way I met him, he got in touch with me via the internet and wanted to do an interview about Lionheart. So we did that interview. He sent me written questions. I sent him written answers. And the article turned out really good. Now, right around the same time, friends of mine had been trying to goad me into writing a memoir, just about my experiences in the business. And so I was thinking about it, and my wife was bugging me about it too. You know, you should sit down and write a book about yourself. But again, I didn't want it to be me shouting from the rooftops about myself, about how great I am. Okay. Right. And by having an author write it as a biography, he was able to interview people that I'd worked with friends of mine, like Boaz Yakin and Brian Thompson. And so he was able to get opinions from other people that I'd worked with. Now, if it was an autobiography, it'd be hard to work that in. Okay, so I'm talking about myself, but now here's what my friend Boaz says about me. So it worked out much better that way. And if anything, yeah, maybe I could write a memoir one of these days if I found that there was enough interest. I don't think there'd be enough interest for me to write a memoir. You know, I'm not Oliver Stone, okay? And Oliver Stone did write what's pretty much a memoir. And one thing I also did with this book, I really wrote it for the fans. I tried to keep out. There's a lot of details in a person's life that have nothing to do with their work,
right?
And so I didn't want to put in stuff like, well, this was my first dog, and this is my first girlfriend, and this is and I didn't want stuff like that. I wanted to put in stuff that I thought the fans would be interested in, so they'd be interested in the movies that influenced me when I was growing up, and my experiences with the play Tracers, which a lot of people don't really know about, but it was kind of a pivotal moment in my life working on Tracers. And again, that works into the title. When I say from Vietnam to Van Damme, well, that pretty much describes my career, because I started out writing a lot of stuff about Vietnam. Tracers was one of them. And I wrote a screenplay called Firebase, which Stallone read. And that's what got Stallone to hire me to co-write Rambo 3 with him. It was this big Vietnam piece. And then I did this little film Firefight that was also Vietnam. So I really had, like Vietnam was on my brain. And I was doing a lot of Vietnam-oriented stuff at first. Well, you know what they say, write what you know. And that was something. I knew the Marines, I knew Vietnam, and that's interesting stuff. Very few people have gone through that experience, and so they want to know more about it. They want to hear about it. And so I ended up writing a lot of Vietnam-oriented stuff at first, and then via Bloodsport met Jean-Claude Van Damme. We got to be really good friends just right away. We just connected, and so I ended up doing a lot of Van Damme stuff. You know, I directed 4 Van Damme movies, and I've been involved with. I've got writing credits, or at least worked on at least a dozen screenplays that are Van Damme movies. So, so that explains the title. Okay, there was no Van Damme in my life when I was writing those Vietnam scripts. And then once I met Van Damme and we had a few successes, well then that became a very important part of my career.
Well, thank you for your time, Sheldon. Thank you for the many years of great art, and looking forward to what's coming next from you, whether it's another book, whether it's a short film from the past, whether it's a new film, whatever it is. Keep up
Well,
the great.
there's a couple things on the horizon. Hopefully they're going to work out. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't want to give too many things away. I got something new brewing that's going to be kind of exciting, but we'll see if it happens or not. But meanwhile, we got Firefights going to be on YouTube in about a month, and I think a lot of people are going to be very, very intrigued by that. It's not Platoon. It's not All Quiet on the Western Front. We had a very limited budget, very limited time, and I think I got a good little movie made. But what makes it worthwhile is the fact that you got Frank Dukes and then Philip Ree and Brian Thompson, and it's kind of a neat little movie. So hopefully people will enjoy it, or at least it's a historical relic that basically these are like the first small stepping stones towards Bloodsport and towards Lionheart and Double Impact and all these other movies. This is basically the beginnings of that.
Paltrocast.